The Life and Sad Ending of Gene Clark. While Gene Clark will always be best known for his short stint as lead singer for the Byrds from 1964 to 1966, he also carved out a quixotic career that saw the singer-songwriter seeking success in a variety of settings in the years that followed. He made psychedelic pop singles in the mid-60s, helped invent country rock with 1968's Gene Clark with the Gostin Brothers album, then teamed with Doug Dillard in the late 60s to make two records that served as a blueprint for Americana. In the 70s, Clark made a pair of solo albums that cemented his place as a visionary singer-songwriter, the starkly acoustic White Light in 1971 and the slickly baroque No Other 3 years later, then continued to make records, both solo and re-teaming with members of the Byrds. A late career highlight was the duet album he cut in 1987 with the Text One's Carla Olson titled So Rebellious a Lover. Through it all and in every setting, Clark's clear and true vocals, his poetic turns of phrase, and his skill at weaving melancholy melodies never wavered. Though small in comparison to many of his contemporaries, his body of work is impressive and, long after his passing in 1991, has remained influential to each new generation of jangle pop artists who followed in his wake. Gene Clark was born in Tipton, Missouri, in 1944. Clark's father was an amateur musician with a passion for country music that rubbed off on young Gene. He began learning the guitar at age 9 and was soon picking out Hank Williams tunes, as well as material by early rockers such as Elvis Presley and the Everly Brothers. Clark began performing with several folk groups working out of Kansas City, which led to a more lucrative position with the New Christy Minstrels, a well-scrubbed folk pop ensemble who scored a hit single with Green Green. However, Clark longed to perform his own songs and didn't care for life on the road. After hearing the Beatles for the first time, Clark decided he wanted to form a rock band and he quit the New Christy Minstrels and moved to Los Angeles. There, he met a fellow folka who had his head turned around by the Beatles, Jim McGinn, and in 1964 they started assembling a band that would, in time, come to be known as the Byrds. Gene Clark quickly became the Byrds' dominant songwriter, penning most of their best-known originals, including Feel a Whole Lot Better, Here Without You, and 8 Miles High, and was one of the group's strongest vocal presences. However, Clark's less than impressive skills as a guitarist often made him look like a backing vocalist on stage, and the combination of Clark's dislike of traveling and resentment that his songwriting income made him the best-paid member of the group led to tensions within the Byrds, and in 1966 Clark opted to leave the group. Columbia Records, the label the Byrds recorded for, signed Clark as a solo artist, and in 1967 he released his first solo set, Gene Clark with the Gostin Brothers, a pioneering fusion of country and rock. However, Clark's album was released almost simultaneously with the Byrds' Younger Than Yesterday, and Clark's set was a commercial bust. With the future of his solo career in doubt, Clark briefly rejoined the Byrds in 1967, but by the end of the year, he once again parted ways with the group. In 1968, Clark signed with A&M Records, and, once again following his interest in blending country with rock, he began a collaboration with virtuoso multi-instrumentalist Doug Dillard. However, legal problems prevented their release at the time, and it wasn't until 1971 that a Gene Clark solo set finally emerged, entitled White Light. A strong, primarily acoustic set, White Light sold poorly in America but was an unexpected hit in the Netherlands. Clark's next album, Roadmaster, combined new material with the unreleased 1969 tracks cut with the Byrds. While it was a strong album, A&M chose not to release it and it was initially available only in Holland. Clark left A&M just in time for the Byrds to cut a reunion album with their original lineup. Clark contributed a pair of fine songs to the project, Full Circle and Changing Heart, but most of the album sounded uninspired and the reunion quickly splintered. In 1974, Clark signed to Asylum Records and cut the polished but heartfelt No Other. Clark, however, had hoped to release the set as a double album, which did not please label head David Geffen, and the album stalled in the marketplace without promotion. In 1977, Clark returned with a new album, Two Sides to Every Story, and put his fear of flying on hold to mount an international tour to promote it. For his British dates, Clark found himself booked on a tour with ex-Byrds Roger McGuinn and Chris Hillman, Audiences were clearly hoping for a Byrds reunion, and while the three men had planned nothing of the sort, they didn't want to let down their fans and played a short set of Byrds hits as an encore for several dates on the tour. This led the three men to begin working up new material together once they returned to America, and in 1978 they began touring as McGinn, Clark, and Hillman. After a well-received acoustic tour, the trio signed a major deal with Capitol Records and released their self-titled debut in 1979. However, the slick production didn't flatter the group, and the album was a critical and commercial disappointment. Clark soon became disenchanted with the project, and on their second album, 1980's City, the billing had changed to Roger McGinn and Chris Hillman, with Gene Clark. By 1981, Clark had left and the group briefly continued on as McGinn/Hillman. After splitting with McGinn and Hillman, Clark stayed on the sidelines of music for several years, assembling a band called Flight that failed to score a record deal. Clark finally re-emerged in 1984 with a new band and album called Firebird. The rising popularity of Django Rocker's REM sparked a new interest in the Byrds, and Clark began developing new fans among L.A.'s roots-conscious Paisley underground scene. Clark appeared as a guest on an album by the Songwriters, and in 1987 he cut a duo album with Carla Olson of the Text Ones called So Rebellious a Lover. So Rebellious was well received and became a modest commercial success. But Clark began to develop serious health problems around this time. He had ulcers, aggravated by years of heavy drinking, and in 1988 he underwent surgery, during which much of his stomach and intestines had to be removed. Clark also lost a certain amount of goodwill among longtime Byrds fans when he joined drummer Michael Clark for a series of shows billed as a 20th anniversary celebration of the Byrds. Many clubs simply shortened the billing to the Byrds, and Clark soon found themselves in an ugly legal battle with Roger McGinn, David Crosby, and Chris Hillman's overuse of the group's name. The Byrds set aside their differences long enough to appear together at their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in January of 1991, where the original lineup played a few songs together, including Clark's Feel a Whole Lot Better. However, Clark's health continued to decline as his drinking accelerated, and on May 24, 1991, not long after he had begun work on a second album with Carla Olson, Gene Clark died, with the coroner declaring he succumbed as a result of natural causes brought on by a bleeding ulcer. After his passing, Clark's music was consistently reissued and many collections of rarities were released.